Awesome, awesome. Beautiful. So we're going to get started on this important topic today, this topic around the two biggest mistakes women are making about feminine power and energy. And I'm going to go into that a little bit today, but you're going to get a lot more information on my masterclass that I'm running next week a couple of times. The masterclass called The 3 Massive Mistakes Women Are Making That Keep Them Exhausted, Overwhelmed and Burnt Out, you know, stuck on that gerbil wheel of obligation, overwhelm, exhaustion. Okay, I'm going to go into that in great depth next week. I'm doing it live on Zoom, so please come along. So please click on that link and reserve yourself a seat. So let's get ourselves started here today. Now, firstly, I want you to know that this is for you. If you want to know how to be really feminine and how to stop compromising your energy, your success in life, your work, and your relationships, or in fact, your desire to serve or have a sense of mission or purpose, okay? And this work, in fact, the Powerfully Feminine work is not for you if you've already mastered the feminine arts, or in fact, if you're okay with being inside of and continuing with the masculine paradigms out there. That's fine if that's your choice, but this is not the right place for you. So today I'm going to be covering the 2 big misconceptions around what is standing in the way of your feminine energy and power. Okay, this is an important piece here because I want to make sure that these key misconceptions are quashed, kiboshed, okay? I'm going to talk a bit about the huge discovery that I made around feminine power that nobody else is talking about, okay? And what you need to do to find new ways of being that will be both sustainable and get you feeling really juicy, engaged, plugged in, turned on, and alive again, okay? So let's start with misconception number 1. Now, let me just give you a story. So when I left college, I studied and became a commercial interior designer, and I entered the workforce, right? And I entered a world, I was a commercial interior designer, so I was working with architects and builders and project managers. And strangely enough, although I looked like I was in a very feminine sort of profession, the truth was it was an extremely masculine world full of architects and builders and project managers. And so it was just a very corporate environment, truthfully. Most of the time I was in project management, not so much design. Well, there was design elements, but the fun side of design actually ended up going to the interns and the junior people, not the more senior designers. So I spent a lot of time in my, suited up in my $1,000 suits with my briefcase and my 3-inch, black Mary Jane heels, clacking my way through the lift lobbies of very big corporate buildings in Sydney, Australia. And, I was that kind of woman. It's like I was a killer. I was out there to kill, and I would walk through those lobbies like I owned the place. And I remember this experience of, I had long blonde hair. I was in these beautiful suits. I was just the image of the slick corporate woman, right? And I remember having this experience walking through a lobby once where I saw, I was seeing these couples or these women. So they were, suited up because they were in the workday. And I just didn't understand why I wasn't getting the dates and I wasn't getting the men that I wanted. But these women that, through my eyes at the time, through my lens, if you like, who I perceived as being kind of, weak or submissive or, kind of powerless or subservient, or maybe even not very smart, not very capable, and not very willful, were the kind of women that seemed to be getting the men. And I just didn't understand about it. I didn't understand about masculine and feminine back then at all. I had no idea. Say hi if you're coming on in. Lovely to see you. So, I'm being very transparent here. I admit that I used to think that the feminine meant that you were weak and submissive and powerless. And I was very willful and capable and smart and savvy, and I was very, very successful in my career. And so I just didn't identify with what I perceived of as feminine, right? And I just really didn't know. I had no idea what it meant. And what, in fact, I was doing was I was being really masculine. I was really caught in man mode at the time. So this is like a big misconception, especially the kind of women that really love my work, who are smart, savvy, successful, capable, resourceful women. They don't identify with that perception, in fact, misconception of what feminine is, okay? And, you know, if you're like me too, you know, I loved being successful, highly paid for what I did, for what I was, for how I did things and how I thought, how I led. I was a leader in my profession, and I loved that. And then, of course, for me, I ended up translating that into being an entrepreneur. I then started up my own companies and have since, in the last 20 odd years, only worked for myself, and I've started up 5 very successful companies in that time, okay? So the thing is, this perception of the feminine as weak or submissive or lesser than or underneath, it may not be conscious to you. It may be sort of unsaid beliefs that you're carrying around, because at the time for me, they were very unsaid, very hidden, very unacknowledged, okay? So this is the first misconception, and I just wanted to put that one out there. Now, the second misconception or mistake women are making about their perception or misconception about feminine power and energy has to do with understanding the feminine again, actually, but through a slightly different lens. I'm just going to take some tea from my Queen Bee mug. So the second misconception, well, let me tell you, I'm going to reverse this, engineer this, because I had this huge aha. So when, you might know my story a little bit, you know, I was corporate, I was very, very successful. I'd started up my first couple of companies, and then a perfect storm hit, and I had a car stolen and my company taken from me. And all at the time, you know, I was really starting to royally burn out from this way of doing my life, work, and relationships at the time, which was from what I now call man mode, okay? So I didn't know what feminine meant. I didn't know that you could be willful, capable, smart, savvy, and successful, and sexy and sensual all at the same time, and from your feminine power and energy, right? So what happened was, when I went down, so I had this big collapse, I burnt out, I went into full-time spiritual practice for a period where I had the big epiphany and realization that, whoa, all of that previous success that I had come from my masculine side, largely. Like, most of it was from being really masculine. Now, I just need to digress here a little bit. Outwardly, I looked really feminine, okay? And this is actually the third misconception. I'm sneaking a third misconception in here, which is that feminine is about what you look like, or how you dress, or the makeup you wear. It's not. It's not. I call that the adornment side of the feminine. I'm girly. I love that. I love that piece. But it is an outer coating when it is not built on a robust, inner, feminine, juicy, rich sense of your feminine fullness and radiance and essence. It's but a thin surface, and it doesn't take much to scratch the surface of that kind of woman to realize there's not substance underneath. The work with me that I do is about the inner feminine, about shining the feminine from the inside out, okay? This is a very different kind of work. And then the other piece is just fun. It's like the cherry on top, or the cream on top, that's just a joy and a delight, right? For you and for others around you. Okay, so let's go back. So the second misconception, when I had this big epiphany, was I don't know if you know this about me, I've been a trained astrologer for over 20 years. So I've studied astrology, and astrology really is a lifetime study. Okay, it's like learning astrology is a constant research and study. It's a very, very big art. And I also studied a very interesting, unusual type of astrology, which is less focused on what are called the star signs, or the star configurations, and that of the planets, or what are called the planetary forces, and all of the configurations in an astrology chart around the planets, right, and the planetary forces. And having been so trained in these planetary forces, one of the main things we learn when we're looking at planetary forces in somebody's astrology chart is what's called the lower and the higher mode of each planet or planetary force, or each conjunction, or each trine, or each configuration of planets. And, you know, as I sort of emerged out of my own dark night of the soul, what happened was I had this big epiphany. Well, firstly, I realized I wanted to be more feminine. Okay, let's just get that on the table. I wanted to be more feminine. I wanted to experience myself through my feminine. For God's sake, I was a woman in a woman's body, and I'd had this 30-year career, corporate, and then running my own companies. And I burnt myself out from doing it from my masculine, and it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't fun. It wasn't joyful for me or anybody around me, because I was so stressed and my body was really wearing out. Okay. So I'd had the realization I wanted to be feminine, but then what I did is I started the research, like really intense research on, well, what does that mean, and what does that look like, and well, who are the role models anyway? Who do I look to give me that guidance? And I was drawing a blank. You know, I'm talking 10 odd years ago, where there really were not role models. And so you look out there and you look at like successful women in corporate world or politics, not very feminine, right? So they weren't going to be role models. And then you look at someone like actresses or models or something, and yes, they were very beautiful, and into some of them I did admire, actually, because they were not just being actresses. They were actually doing humanitarian work, and they were women that had an aspect of the feminine that I could relate to. But there was very little out there, and they certainly weren't teaching you what that was, what that meant, or how to do it, right? So back to my story about my trainings in astrology. So as I realized that I wanted to be really feminine, what I then had the epiphany about was, oh my God, when I look around the world at people's perception of masculine and feminine, there's so much confusion out there. There's confusion, there's detours, there's misconceptions, and it's not helping. It's not helping people at all, okay? So the epiphany was, wow, there's a higher and a lower mode of feminine, and there's a higher and lower mode of masculine. And as soon as I saw that, you know, the world blew open, and it is now the very core and foundation of the model through which I do my powerfully feminine teachings with my women, okay? So what I call the higher mode of feminine is the true feminine, and the lower mode of the feminine is the false feminine. The false feminine are what I call the maid and the princess, and the true feminine are the queen and the priestess. And there's two true feminine, there's true false feminine. And I go into these in great depth inside of the Powerfully Feminine Intensive course, because there's a lot to understand. And I tell you what, when you grok this model, and you grok, it's kind of an Anglo-Australian expression, right? When you really understand this model, you will realize, you'll suddenly have these huge ahas about yourself. You'll see it in other people. It's a model through which to understand life better, right? And so that was just a big realization for me. Okay. Now, so to become, or to get into the true feminine, how do you do that? That's really, of course, I will do you a disservice trying to tell you that in the next 5 minutes of our conversation here. It, of course, takes leadership, mentorship, and training in the feminine arts. So this was the other realization I had, is the feminine is about arts, you know, it's about arts and skills, but the feminine is less about a certain like strategy and action and order and that kind of thing, because the feminine, you know, is to water what the masculine is to, say, air, right? The feminine has a lot to do with learning how to be in flow. And arts and the art, to me, described the way the feminine lands. It expresses itself through inspiration. But what I discovered is that there are actually 5 core foundational, feminine arts that we need to learn in order to be able to be consistently move back into our feminine polarity at will at any time. And in fact, the thing I also discovered was when you learn the feminine arts, you learn how to apply them into every aspect of your life, your communications, your relationships, whether it's your family or your kids or your partner, or whether you're dating, right? And your work, whether it be corporate or whether you're an entrepreneur or run your own business, okay? So these become intrinsic embodied foundations from which you can then continue to walk through life in your queen, in your true feminine, okay? And so I just wanted to pass these 2, or ended up being 3 core misconceptions today. I wanted to make sure you understood those, because if you've had any ahas or epiphanies, please share them with me. Share them with me in the comments box or the chat right now. I would love to see what your experience is on that. Maple Mew says, I love your videos. Keep up the great quality content. Thank you. My pleasure, my dear. So I am getting the chat screen here, and I do get a little bit of a delay. So if you have any questions, this is a great opportunity to do that. Whilst I'm waiting for the questions, once again, as members of my community, I want to give you the first option to reserve your seat for a completely free live masterclass I'm running next week. I'm running at a few different times, and you're going to be able to go to powerfullyfem.com/PFI. Well, look, I'll just put the link. There's a link above, or there's links below in the description box, and I'll put it in the comments too, okay? Click on the link, because that will take you to a page where you can reserve your seat, and then you'll get reminder emails, etc. And I've got a few, special emails that are going to come for you prior to the masterclass, okay? So please sign up for that. I do have limited seats. There's only a certain number of seats I can have in the live room. So reserve your spot now, because that will ensure that you have your spot reserved. Beautiful. Let's see if there's any questions. Princess of Dawn, hello. You're so inspiring. I wish to be more feminine as well. Beautiful. Well, you're in the right place. Christine, the fact about feminine arts just hit me like a shockwave. Finally, I have an explanation for how my life has been unfolding. Yes. So the learning of the feminine arts is really, really important, because that suddenly is a retraining for your feminine so that it can emerge out of you. I call it the feminine emergence for that reason, right? Whilst I've got you here, another thing you might like to do, and I'll put a link here too, is I have a brand new Facebook group. It's private. You have to apply to enter and answer a few questions. It's called Smart Savvy Sexy, SMART, smart, I'll say it in American, Smart Savvy Sexy. And you will find that on Facebook, and apply. I'll approve you if you answer the questions, and the conversation will continue over there. So I'd love to have you on over at Smart Savvy Sexy. Let's see if you have any questions. Yolanda, hello. Thank you for your videos. Which famous women would be models of feminine essence and power for you? Which famous women? Well, it's still tricky, that one, if I'm honest. I do love a lot of the work of Oprah Winfrey. There are certain, we've got our new princess, Meghan, okay? And there's some other actresses out there who turned their fame toward humanitarian work, and I admire them. And again, I want to make sure you don't get lost in the visuals of the fact that they might be beautiful looking or that they wear beautiful clothes. It's more the essence of what they shine and their direction that they dial their attention toward helping and giving to humanity. That's the kind of things I look for. Luli, Ali, hello, love. Thank you so much for your love from Libya. Oh, wow. Thank you, Lulu. Luli, you're welcome. Ariadne, hi from Greece. Looking forward to my precious advice. Beautiful. Yolanda, I love Oprah, and I love Megan. They're just two I can think of right now. I probably should develop a list. I think the thing is, just as we finish up here today, because I'd love to continue the conversation over at Smart Savvy Sexy, please sign up for the live masterclass coming up next week. But the thing is, you want to stop wasting time. I had to learn this myself. I had to do all the research myself. I did all the trial and error myself in order that I can now teach you very systematically the feminine arts and skills. It's my joy and delight to do that for you. Stop wasting time, because time is our most precious asset. Time is our energy, and our energy is so, so precious as a woman. And I don't want you to waste your time anymore. And so, yes, join me in the masterclass where I can go a lot deeper into some of the topics we touched on today. Sign on up for the masterclass. The link is above here. It's also down in the boxes below. And if you have any further questions, ask them in the comments box. And I'd love to answer your questions. So I'm going to finish up here today, sending you much, much love. And it's been wonderful to talk to you about this topic today. I'll say goodbye for now. Bye-bye.